Hi, it's Lisa. Today I'm going to talk about web fonts and also how to solve a problem that sometimes comes up when you're using web fonts, and that's the problem of faux bolding and faux italics. I have somehow, after using web fonts for about 3 years, managed to avoid this problem until recently. And when I was researching the solution, I learned a few things, so I thought I would share this here. So the first thing I want to do is point out that I'm just using this very simple HTML page with some different elements on it, some that have bolding just by default or from the Bootstrap CSS file, which we're not really going to worry about Bootstrap, and you actually don't even need it for this demonstration. And then styles.css is the one where we're going to put our styles. So I'm linking to both and styles second. What I want to do is use a web font. The first thing I did before I ran into this problem was just go to the Google Web Fonts. The font that I want to use is Open Sans. The nice thing about this one is that there's 10 different styles, so it gives you a lot of flexibility just with staying within one font family. So this is the one that I want. I'm going to go to Quick Use. You can just very quickly choose the versions that you want. So I'm just going to take italic and bold. And you don't want to take them all if you're not going to use them, because it's going to take you longer to load. I don't need to change any of this. And all you have to do is grab this bit of code right here and paste it in. The important thing is to paste it before you load your style sheets, because this is defining your font family as Open Sans, and then it's loading the italic version, the regular version, and the bold. Bold font weight is normally 700. Okay, so I'm going to save that. You can't necessarily tell how you should type the name from looking at this definition, but if we go back to Google, it will tell us right here that we just need to add this to our code. So I'm just going to plug that in there, save it. And when I refresh, you can see that I'm now using this font. Okay, so this is fine and it works great. You can see that the bold looks fine, the italics looks good. It looks the way that it is supposed to. The problem I had was that it was sometimes taking a little bit of time to load the fonts from Google, and I decided to see if the fonts were available for free on FontSquirrel, which is a good source of free fonts, usually nicer, more professional type fonts. The ones that are available, you can usually find them there. So I decided to go there to see if they were there, and this is the website. It's just fontsquirrel.com. So I looked for the font and it was there. The important thing is to find out if you can get the web font kit. Sometimes some of the fonts don't have that, so you need to make sure that it does, but this does. So you just click on it and you can choose the different versions of the font that you want. I'm going to take them all, and then you just click on this button. So I'm going to pause the video, download the fonts and extract them, and then I'll come back in a second and show you what to do with them. So I went ahead and extracted the folder, the kit, and put it in the CSS directory. You don't have to put it there. That's just normally what I like to do. And normally I like to just store any fonts that I'm using on the website in a folder called fonts. So I'm going to change the name. And if we look in this folder, you can see that we have the license, we have a demo page, which we don't really need. I could delete that. The style sheet down here sets up the definitions, and we will look at that. And then here, these are all the actual files that store the font for the web, and each of these different versions, so this is the bold italic, has 4 different files depending on the browser that you're going to use. They're all going to use different versions of this file, so you really need all of them if you want your website to work on all browsers. Okay, so that's what that is. And then if we look over here, let me refresh this. So it's fonts. Now what I want to look at is the style sheet. And you can see the definitions here for the different types of font styles. Now, if you're not going to be using all of these, like I know that I'm not going to be using extra bold, so it makes sense to just go ahead and delete those if you're not going to be using them. So I'm going to save that, and then in my index, I do not need the link to Google anymore. Instead of doing that, what I need to do is make a reference to my fonts style sheet, because that's what it's called. So again, this needs to be loaded before your regular styles. And then in my styles, I need to change this reference to whatever it was called here, and that is Open Sans Regular. Okay, so now if I refresh, look at this page and pay attention to the headers. Notice that the bold looks totally different. The body text looks fine, but the bold looks odd and the italics looks terrible. This is the browser trying to make its own version of bold and italics because it does not have a definition of bold and italics. Well, it actually does have a definition of the bold and italics, but unfortunately, the font family was defined with a different name. Open Sans Light, Open Sans Light Italic, Open Sans Italic, etc. So we need to fix this. Now, when I first ran into this problem, my first inclination was to use this name. So this says Open Sans Italic, and I started to go into my styles and change. So I could do strong Of course, that's wrong. Let's say M instead. Strong would be using Open Sans Bold. And I actually started to do this, and I quickly realized how stupid I was being because we're losing all the benefits of cascading in style sheets, and having to fix everything is ridiculous because what if I decide later that I don't even want to use Open Sans? So, but I really wasn't sure how to solve the problem. So I did some searching and I found the solution, and I will link to the post in my blog post about who tipped me off to the right way to do this. But what you really need to do is change your style sheet here. And again, we don't need all of these definitions. I am not going to be using the Open Sans Light. I'm going to leave these in here for now, but I want to just go to the regular. And I'm going to just change the name. I can choose what name I want it to have. So I'm just going to call it Open Sans. And I could put a space in there or not. I'm going to call that Open Sans. And this is the regular. And then I'm going to go to the italic. And I'm also going to call this Open Sans. So it has the exact same name, but notice that it's loading different fonts. So if we didn't do anything else, what it would do is it would make all of our fonts over here italic. So if I change this, I'm just going to save it, go back to styles. I'm going to erase this. And we're going to call this Open Sans. Okay, so now when I reload, notice that everything is using that italic font because I have just overridden my definition of Open Sans. So what I need to do here is I need to go down to font style and just change this to italic. Okay, so now I have my Open Sans Italic. You just changed the style here. I'm leaving the font weight at normal, and I have Open Sans Regular. So now if I reload, you can see that the italics looks good and the body text looks good. I still need to solve the bold issue though. So now here, I can go to bold, change it to Open Sans again, and here I'm going to say bold. And I'm also going to make a bold italic, although we don't have a demonstration of that on the page. but we would just call this bold and we would make the weight italic. So we have 4 fonts that are loaded as open sans, but we're defining them in the 4 different ways that you can. So now if I reload, you can see that the bold is back to the way it is supposed to be. The really neat thing about this solution is that let's say I decided I actually don't want to use, I think this is a little bit thick, this bold, so I could, instead of making that the bold, comment that out, I'm going to use the semi-bold instead. So I'm just, again, going to call this open sans. And this is bold, italic. And this one will be normal bold. Okay, so now I have redefined the bolds, but to use the lighter weight of the bolding, the semi-bold instead. So now when I refresh, we have a slightly smaller bold, and I think this looks better, especially on Chrome. So this is actually the one that I'm using in my project. And you could also, if you wanted to use this super lightweight, we could call this open sans, but I'm going to use a number here instead. I'm going to say it's 200. So now if I go back to styles and let's just do header 1, I'm still going to use the font family of open sans, but I'm going to say font weight 200. And now when I refresh this, you can notice that it's using the thin. The thing that you need to do, and I would probably erase anything I'm not using like this. So the thing that you need to do when you want to set up these font face style sheets is you need to remember to call everything the same name. The font family should always be the same. I really don't know why Font Squirrel doesn't do it this way, because a lot of people are just going there and grabbing the font face kit. And, you know, that's what I was doing. It wasn't until I ran into the issue that I actually noticed it. I think I hadn't run into it before because normally I am using maybe one font for the headers and one for the text, and I just hadn't noticed it. So it's possible I have some faux bolding out there. But this is a pretty nice solution and it's simple. Just remember, call everything the same name and define the weight and style here, and then you'll be good. So that's it. I hope that was helpful. Thanks.